Hello again. In this video, we are going to learn about the S3 Object Lifecycle Management, and this is a very important topic from the exam point of view. So what is an Object Lifecycle Management? It is a feature offered by S3 to manage the storage of the objects and the cost associated with it throughout the life of the objects. We shall see in detail how that works. Why to use this Object Lifecycle Management? Well, the main reason behind using a lifecycle management is to move the objects to different storage classes depending upon how frequently they are used to reduce the cost. This is called as transition of the object. You can also mark objects that would no longer be used as expired after a certain period. This is called the expiration of the object. So S3 can even delete such expired objects for you. This transition and expiration is done via lifecycle rules. When to use this object lifecycle management? Let us see a scenario for this. Let's say you have an application called MyVisLabs which dumps logs such as server access logs to an S3 bucket. After a year or so, you might see the logs usage or access pattern something like this. Such logs may be useful and frequently accessed only within first few days of their creation. After certain days or weeks, they would be used less frequently, and in fact, after a few months, they may be even useless for you. So, should you still keep them in the bucket on S3 standard storage? It will certainly keep costing you money. To tackle this, a better solution is that you create a lifecycle rule in Object Lifecycle Management such that you can move these log files to different cost-effective storage classes such as S3 infrequent access, S3 one zone infrequent access, or Glacier archives after a few days, and after some more days you can just delete them. So how does it work? Let us see how Object Lifecycle Management work in the AWS console. In the AWS console, click on S3, go to the bucket, select Properties, go to Management, and click on Add Lifecycle Rule. Give a rule name. Now you can add a filter to limit the scope to certain objects that have a certain prefix. Otherwise, this rule is going to be applied to all the objects in the bucket. That's what we want. So let's go ahead and click Next. Now, one thing to remember here is that you can apply this lifecycle rule to only the current version of the objects in the bucket, or it can be applied to all the previous versions of the bucket. For now, let's just select current version. Let's add a transition. Now here you can select a different storage classes, such as you can opt to transit the objects to standard infrequent access or one zone infrequent access or Amazon Glacier. Select standard IA. Now one thing to remember here is that you cannot transfer the objects to another storage class before 30 days. That is, the object needs to be in a class for minimum 30 days before it can be transitioned to another class. You can also add subsequent transitions such that it can be moved from standard IA class to, let's say, Amazon Glacier after another 30 days. So that is going to be 60. Select Next. Here, you can mark the expiry of an object. That is, you can mark certain objects to be deleted after a certain number of days. Again, here you can select the current version of the object or all other previous versions or both. Let's select current version. Now remember that you can delete an object one day after its transition. That is, in the previous screen, we configured such that the object would be moved to Glacier after 60 days of its creation. So you can mark this object for deletion after 61 days. You can also clean up the expired object delete markers and incomplete multipart uploads. In one of the previous videos, we learned about multi-part upload, where a user uploaded a large objects in parts. With this option, you can clean up all the incomplete parts in the multi-part upload. Select Next. Now you can review your lifecycle rule where we have scheduled a transition of the object to standard IA storage class from standard storage after 30 days of its creation, then the object would be transited to Amazon Glacier after 60 days, and the object will eventually be marked as expired and deleted exactly after 61 days. Let's go ahead and save this. And as shown on your screen, this lifecycle rule will be applied to entire bucket, that is including all the objects with their current versions only. The actions for current version is to move the object first to standard IS storage, then to Glacier, and then to expire. And this is how the lifecycle rules are configured on a bucket. Remember that you can configure and apply the lifecycle rule to all the objects in a bucket, or you can add a filter to the objects by prefix. You can transition the current or previous or both versions. You cannot transfer the objects to another storage class before 30 days. So the object needs to be in a class for minimum 30 days before its transition to another class. For example, if an object was added on January 1st, you can only transfer it to another storage class on or after 31st January. If it needs to be transferred to say one zone IA, it can only be done after another 30 days, that is on or after 3rd of March. You can define different lifecycle rules for current and previous versions of the object. That is, you can move current version earlier or later than its previous versions. For the deletion, you can delete the objects within 1 day of the transition. In our previous example, the object can be expired and deleted on or after 4th of March. So, expiration date is dependent on the transition dates. You can clean up the expired object delete markers and the incomplete multi-part uploads using the lifecycle rule. Remember that the user can cancel the multi-part upload, and such incomplete transfers can get cleaned using this option. The object lifecycle management has eventual consistency. That is, when you add a lifecycle configuration to a bucket, there is usually some lag before a new or updated lifecycle configuration is fully propagated to all the S3 systems. So, expect a delay of few minutes before the lifecycle configuration fully takes effect. This delay can also occur when you delete a lifecycle configuration. When you disable or delete a lifecycle rule, after a small delay, S3 stops scheduling new objects for deletion or transition. Any objects that were already scheduled will be unscheduled and they won't be deleted or transitioned. There may be a lag between when the lifecycle configuration rules are satisfied and when the action triggered by satisfying the rule is taken. However, changes in billing happens as soon as the lifecycle configuration rule is satisfied, even if the action is not yet taken. One example is you are not charged for storage after the object expiration time, even if the object is not deleted immediately. Another example is you are charged Amazon Glacier storage rates as soon as the object transition time elapses, even if the object is not transitioned to Glacier immediately. Finally, when you add a lifecycle configuration to a bucket, the configuration rules apply to both existing objects and objects that you add later. For example, if you add a lifecycle configuration rule today with an expiration action that causes objects with a specific prefix to expire 30 days after creation, S3 will queue for removal any existing objects that are more than 30 days old. For the exam, remember that using object lifecycle management is a way of saving you the cost. So if the question presents you with a scenario where you need to save a cost on the storage in S3, try to choose an option which allows you to define lifecycle rule on a bucket such that it moves the data to different storage classes and saves you the cost. I hope you understood this concept in this video. Thank you for watching this, and I will see you in the next one. Hello again. In this video, we are going to learn about S3 storage classes. This is a very important topic from the exam's point of view. So far, we know that S3 charges you by the amount of storage used or consumed by your account. If you have an application where you have stored huge amount of data, such as old financial records or old transaction logs which you access very rarely. You would wish that you were charged less for storing such data because you don't use them often, right? Or you just don't need the extra high availability or durability of standard S3. You are quite happy to choose a cheaper option with less availability or durability. Is it possible? Well, storage classes exactly provides you with such options. Storage classes provide you with different options or tiers of storage based on how frequently the data is accessed, or if it can tolerate slower performance, or if it is fault tolerant. S3 offers three storage classes. S3 standard for general purpose storage of frequently accessed data, S3 standard infrequent access or S3 standard IA, and S3 one zone infrequent access or S3 one zone IA for long-lived but less frequently accessed data, and Amazon Glacier for long-term archive. This is the default storage class for all the objects that you upload to a bucket. So if you do not specify any storage explicitly, your objects would be in this storage class by default. Note that the data is replicated across at least three different availability zones for high durability and availability. Since this is managed by AWS itself, you do not have access to any of these copies. Amazon S3 standard storage class provides you with the durability of 99.999999999% and availability of 99.99%. That is the highest in all storage classes on Amazon Web Services. Amazon S3 offers low latency and high throughput, which makes it suitable for many applications such as virtually any cloud application or dynamic websites or any content distribution, mobile and gaming applications or big data applications and so on. You can always use the S3 Lifecycle Management to configure the lifecycle policies such that it automatically migrates the objects from this class to any other appropriate storage classes, which will save you a lot of cost. Just a side note on reduce redundancy. If you come across this term in the exam, just remember that this class is designed for non-critical, reproducible data that can be stored with less redundancy than the standard storage class. So if your application is tolerant of some data loss, you could choose this option. For example, if your application produces thumbnails from the actual images, and if you can afford to lose the thumbnails because you can regenerate them quickly, you might want to store your images on the S3 standard but the thumbnails on the reduced redundancy storage class. S3 itself recommends that you use standard S3 rather than this option. So in the exam, if you are given with a choice whether to go for S3 standard or reduced redundancy to store your data, you might want to prefer S3 standard than the reduced redundancy. Now let us look at some of the infrequent access storage classes. S3 standard infrequent access or S3 standard IA is used for data that is accessed less frequently but requires rapid access when needed. In this class, the data is replicated across at least three different availability zones, just like standard S3, for high durability and availability. This storage class provides you with the same durability as that of S3 standard, that is 11 nines, but it provides the availability of 99.9%, which is lesser than that of S3 standard. And that is exactly why this storage costs less than S3 standard, but it charges you for retrieving the data per GB. This is a very important point that this particular storage class would charge you if you retrieve the data per GB. Just like S3 standard, this class also supports the S3 lifecycle management to automatically migrate the objects from this class to any other appropriate classes such as Amazon Glacier. Let us take a look at the S3 one zone infrequent access storage class. This storage class is used for the data that is accessed less frequently but requires rapid access when needed. But unlike the other Amazon storage classes, which store data in a minimum of three availability zones, this storage class stores the data in a single availability zone. Hence, if that availability goes down, your data would get lost. It still provides you with 11 nines of durability, but with a reduced availability of 99.5%, which is lesser than that of S3 standard IA. And because of this, storing data in S3 one zone IA costs you 20% less than storing it in the S3 standard IA class. S3 one zone IA is ideal for customers who want a lower cost option for infrequently accessed data but do not require the availability and resilience of S3 standard or S3 standard IA storage. It's a good choice, for example, for storing secondary backup copies of on-premises data or easily recreatable data, or for storage used as an S3 cross-region replication target from another AWS region. Similar to other storage classes, this option also supports creation of lifecycle policies to automatically migrate objects from this class to other appropriate storage classes. Amazon Glacier is a secure, durable, and extremely low-cost storage service for data archiving. So you would be using this storage class for archiving your data rather than using it for the data that you would be frequently accessing. Glacier provides you with three different options for retrieving the archives: standard, expedited, and bulk. We are going to cover Amazon Glacier in detail in a separate video, so we will stick to introduction only as part of this video. Amazon Glacier costs significantly less than all other S3 storage classes, but it charges you for retrieving the data per GB. Similar to all other storage classes, Amazon Glacier supports the object lifecycle policies to automatically migrate objects from this class to other appropriate classes. Now, one thing to remember is that although the objects are stored in Amazon Glacier, they remain as S3 objects that you manage in Amazon S3, and you cannot access them directly through Amazon Glacier. Now, you can pause this video at this moment and take a good look at this table. The important things to remember for the exam is that S3 standard, S3 standard IA, and S3 one zone IA storage classes, they support high performance. But since Glacier is an archival solution, it is ideally suited where the performance requirement is low. All the storage classes would give you durability of 11 nines. However, they differ in the availability that they provide. S3 standard provides you with 99.99%, whereas it gets reduced in standard IA and it gets further reduced in one zone IA. As far as replicating amongst the availability zone is concerned, S3 one zone A does not replicate your data. The data is stored in a single availability zone, and hence it is the cheapest option, but it has the lowest availability. All these storage classes support encryption of data at rest as well as SSL for the data in transit. They all support lifecycle management. The cost would of course differ based on the availability. And finally, all the storage classes except S3 standard would charge you for retrieval of the data per gigabyte. In this video, we learned about different storage classes such as S3 standard, which is the default, most durable and most available, however, the costliest storage class. S3 standard I provides you with a less availability than S3 standard, which is just 99.9%, but it is affordable and it is available for lower costs. S3 one zone I gives you even further reduced availability, which is 99.5%, but it is even cheaper option than S3 standard IA. Amazon Glacier is used for archiving of the data. It is the most cost-effective among all the storage solutions, and it provides you with the different options for retrieving the archives. All the storage classes except S3 would charge you for the data retrieval per GB. And finally, all of these options support lifecycle management policies for object management. I hope you understood these concepts in this video. For the exam, you do not need to remember each and every property of the class, but it is important to remember how these classes differ from each other and in which situation which class would be most appropriate. Thank you for watching this video.